Welcome to the Paramedic AF Show with your hosts, Dan and Michelle. We hope you've come prepared to be challenged, offended, and encouraged. We are here to create a better future for the entire EMS industry. We have changed or omitted names of individuals in order to protect the innocent, the guilty, and the incompetent. We believe that knowledge fuels power, ignorance is not bliss, and nothing will change until we abandon the status quo. This is our design. Welcome to the show. And welcome to the Paramedic AF Show. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Michelle.
And we are back together again for a joint episode. We'll keep ping-ponging back and forth.
Yeah. So today, what we're going to be talking about is something that was actually brought to us by a listener. We appreciate all of y'all reaching out and giving us feedback. And it's kind of, he had some kind of specific questions and broad topics, ideas, yes, that we kind of spread and expanded on. I will say this, I'm very glad that he brought it up because this is actually goes along with some stuff that we've been noticing in the field, more so over the last couple months, and we cannot wait to talk about it.
Well, let me actually pull up his message, just to give people some context, just so, like, y'all can hear it. He had a couple of different questions, so maybe giving y'all some context, because we kind of ordered stuff differently. So
and added to.
Yes, we kind of expanded on it, used it as kind of a starting point. So his original message was, I've been thoroughly enjoying the content y'all have been pushing out. Definitely not another standard EMS podcast. Yes.
We love that.
That's exactly what we're going for. I have a topic I'd like to hear y'all speak on at some point. As someone who has recently transitioned off a truck full-time to a job where I act as a first responder, meaning like he's not transporting patients, he's just truly first responding. Can you speak to the mentality of first responders versus truck workers? I've heard a lot of people who hate medical calls but show up anyways. The level of commitment to quality care and continuing education mixed with other responsibilities on the job as well. Sorry, I didn't read that properly. It was a little longer sentence. And he continues, non-transport personnel certainly play a major role in EMS, but how can the high standards realistically be maintained with volunteers and other competing priorities? So, kind of a lot. We split it up a little bit, but that's kind of where our starting point was. So, kind of we wanted to not really sidestep, but kind of start at a slightly different spot than he did, and that's talking about, in general, ground transport EMS interacting with kind of other versions of EMS. So like interacting with flight crews, critical care units, with QRVs, and we think of QRV as a very general term, but if there's any listeners who have a different term for it, here in South Carolina, a QRV is a quick response vehicle. Some places call them chase trucks. I don't even know what all the other squads, whatever your terminology is, but solo paramedic vehicles that do not transport on their own.
Yeah, it's usually an SUV or like a truck that they're truly able to first respond, be ALS intercept. Some of ours carry blood and ultrasound, so, depending on what you're doing.
And, I mean, in some areas of the country, they have 2 paramedics per QRV. Down here, it's usually just 1.
That's fair.
So a common interaction in EMS is between your transport trucks and your flight crews. And I think we've all had slightly different interactions. I have always had excellent interactions with flight crews. They've always been truly the epitome of professionalism. I even remember, like, when I was a driver at an awful service back in the day. It doesn't exist anymore, so I can say what I want about it, I guess. I remember we picked up a pediatric flight crew from, I want to say they were from Ohio. And these people were the most amazing, respectful, intelligent, professional people I'd ever met. I was a completely ignorant 20-something-year-old, and my partner was special. And they made us part of the team. They treated us with respect. They didn't, just have us in the corner as their, butlers. It was wonderful. But I also know that sometimes there can be pissing matches between ground and flight crews, and there's often, I think, a misuse of flight crews.
I cannot wait to get into that in just in just a
Well,
second.
and we both have very strong opinions about that in different ways.
Oh, interesting. I don't know if I've heard yours, but
Well,
with the whole
yeah, you go
attitude,
ahead.
well, with the whole attitude thing, I agree. I've always had wonderful experiences with the flight crews I've dealt with. For those of you, if you're not aware, flight EMT is actually a thing.
What?
Yes.
Where?
So hold up. So when I worked at the NICU, well, when I worked at the NICU, I saw the same guy frequently. They worked. I don't know if it was like 7 on, 7 off, like type thing. I don't know how they did it. But when I was at the NICU and we had to, so I was at a 3B NICU. So like the only higher level would be like a 4, which is where they can do like these special like high, risk surgeries and everything. So there were several babies that we had to fly out of there. And the crew that came in, the one lady was a paramedic RN, so she could do like respiratory and all the things. And then her partner was a flight EMT, and I talked at length with him about it. Like, it's not like he was a paramedic but just hadn't gotten his flight stuff upgraded. Like he was an EMT. So no idea. I could not tell you what the flight service was, but apparently that is a thing. But my experiences have always been very good. Now, those are on calls.
Yeah.
We have run into providers, not like on shift, but just talking, we all know each other, all the rest of it. They have some of the worst fucking attitudes.
Well, I feel like it's kind of a syndrome that happens with anybody who is new to a certification or kind of job. And there's varying degrees to it, but you see a lot of people who, when they're brand new EMT, they have just this huge chip on their shoulder that they're just God's gift to EMS. And then you get some new medics who they just think they are God's gift to EMS. And I think part of that depends on the program you come from, because some programs do a better job of weeding that out than others do.
But then, hold on, but then you have some providers, supervisors, providers, services, whatever, that literally make being like a critical care provider a clique.
Oh, agreed.
Like, and it doesn't matter how many years. I mean,
Well, and I've seen that cut both ways, even just with medics,
Agreed.
depending on the service. So, but I agree that there's a we like to be able to be elite, and I think especially in a world where we are the redheaded stepchild of healthcare in general, I think that there's a tendency to look for ways to have like look at me. And again, this is not meant to be a categorical shitting on a group of people, but it is kind of a funny pattern that we've noticed, at least locally in our own experience.
Now, with the whole utilization, like, don't get me wrong, there's certain rural parts of the country, I mean, certain things, like a ton of stuff in general needs to be flighted out. But especially... life flighted. Sorry. Flown. I don't know.
They flighted away.
Listen, it's been a long day. I'm pretty sure I could vomit numbers at this point from all that I've been reading. But anyways, life flighted. No.
They were flown out.
There you go.
Plain English. They were flown out.
Yeah. But now my brain stopped.
Rural areas.
Utilization.
Yeah.
Here we go.
There we go.
A lot of times necessary. But let's take our area, for example. There are certain, I don't even want to say services, but like certain areas where people are known for, literally the running joke is you fly out everything. Like, what? You can't be a provider because, like, you fly out everything.
That's the lazy way out, people.
Well, but here's the thing. I have worked with a partner before where we found out, yes, it's kind of armchair quarterbacking type thing, but in general, we heard about a call that, the off-going shift had flown out. Literally, they'd flown it out and come to shift change, like at our station spot. And they told us, and it's like, you flew it out because it was into shift, right? And they were kind of like, yeah, kind of. I mean, we kind of tweaked it, like, it was kind of necessary. Some people literally use it as a lazy way out. Like, oh, I'm going to fly this instead of driving it in because I don't want to get off late. Like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And a kind of soapbox that I went off on with some students, not in a hateful way, but just like us as providers need to take into consideration the utilization of resources. Like, no, I don't want flight crews or CC, well, not really CC, but like flight crews, especially since blood's coming to the field, become obsolete, especially because there's so many parts of the country that it's like necessary for most stuff.
Yeah.
But something we need to take into consideration is depending on when the flight crew, let's take them for example, is alerted, they have to prepare. Then it's the time that it takes to get to the scene, land, make patient contact. Does that patient need RSI? They're not going to RSI in flight, so they may be sitting on scene for 20, 30 minutes. Then it's, flight to the hospital, offloading, getting to the trauma bay. Sometimes, especially depending on your service and your capabilities, if we can RSI en route safely, or even, ALS intercept, RSI, and then go, sometimes going by ground is still faster.
No, and I am a firm believer that you should really limit what you fly out. And I understand that geography plays a role in this, and if you're half a state away from a hospital, okay, yeah, you should probably go ahead and fly out that STEMI or fly out that stroke or whatever. But definitely in the area where we live in the upstate of South Carolina, you can spit twice and get to hospitals. I mean, they're all over the place. There's very few counties that don't have a hospital. So if you're around here, we'll say, you don't have to fly someone out because they're having a STEMI. I would actually say that's the reckless thing to do, because if that patient codes in the helicopter, they're fucked. Like, it's going to take a minute to get that Lucas on it, or autopulse, whatever they use. I think they use autopulses.
Well, really, they don't like flying.
Well, no, they don't like
cardiac
flying.
arrest, period.
No, but I'm saying, like, if somebody arrests mid-flight,
Yes.
there's not a whole lot they can do for them in the air. So then they're going to have to land, and that whole time that patient's not doing well. Same thing can happen with strokes. You can have your stroke patients that are okay 1 minute, and then they need a tube the next minute. Like I said, they can't RSI in the back of the helicopter. There's just no room. Mm-hmm. So, and we could go on and on about case studies and examples, and we didn't mean to. We're not. This isn't an episode just about flight. Just use your brain, and if you're calling for a helicopter just because you're anxious and nervous, that's the wrong reason to call for a helicopter. You should be confident that you're utilizing that helicopter for what they actually are there to do. They will never tell you no, because they appreciate the business. I mean, I don't mean that in a harsh way. Just
no, I get it.
Their need is slowly diminishing. They're still at uber high acuity stuff, but the other stuff, their need is dropping. So use your brain, medic up, and deal with it.
Well, and you don't want to utilize it, the closest helo for, something stupid because you want to get off on time and take them away from a crew,
that needs to fly them out.
That actually needs to fly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't ever fly. Just, I told my students during that lecture, like, it's one of those things you really need to consider the, like, timeline of everything.
So there's another group, another subgroup of EMS that there often is a war with, or at least some kind of clashing with, is QRVs versus transport units. And part of this depends again on where you are in the country, but I've noticed a double-edged sword with that. I've noticed that there are a lot of QRV providers who think that because they're on a QRV that their shit doesn't stink. And they think that they can just treat other providers, whether they're BLS providers or ALS providers. They think that just because they're on a QRV that they can just talk to those other people however they want. And that's fucking stupid. There's nothing magical about being on a QRV that makes you hot shit. You are still a paramedic. You still have to do paramedic shit. You got the same equipment, sometimes less equipment. Sometimes you actually have a little bit less at your disposal than a full ALS transport truck does. Mm-hmm. So keep some humility in mind. You still need those other people that are responding to you. You need to maintain a good rapport with them. Now, on the flip side, the transport units can, and this is a mixed bag, but you can often have transport units that blow off the QRV providers.
Well, and on on both sides of that, I've experienced both just within the last few months. And it, I don't know which way I want to rage more. Like,
They're
both.
both immature. Both are stupid and pathetically immature.
Well,
Period.
so
Grow the fuck up,
I
people.
was kind of in a rural area and had a QRV medic that was, I guess you could say supervisor. She had another name, but a supervisor who literally everybody that knows her, and now I try to take the reputation with a grain of salt, make my own,
Assessment, judgment.
yeah, assessment, judgment, those words. And she literally lived up to every single one of them. Like, she'll get dispatched to something and literally cancel herself off of every call and be like, yo, if you need me, call me. If crew is going to a cardiac arrest, she'll cancel herself off. And you're like, but I need something. Like, or she'll get on scene and literally do the bare minimum, like the absolute bare minimum. You're lucky if you get vitals from her, and she's been on scene for 30 minutes. Like, it, but it's not just that it's the lazy, it's the attitude that comes with it, that she's God and, can't be bothered with you tiny puny humans. Like, that attitude is not okay just because you're on a truck. Now, on the other flip side of it, I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but that's just not how I am. I am on a QRV. I was called out to, it was a BLS patient, possible UTI, met 0 sepsis criteria. And the crew coming to me, the transport crew was a BLS truck, and they were supposed to have like a 30-minute ETA. It was like 45, which I'm not holding too much to because, traffic, it was kind of rural area, all the rest of it. But in that time that I was waiting, I got literally every single demographic, wrote down every single drug, every single medical condition. Like, I had tiny notebook, the teeny tiny notebooks, but 3 pages worth of stuff that I had a firefighter, like EMT student with me that wanted to do stuff. And when the BLS crew got on scene, I was trying to give them a report and handed them literally all of the information. And whatchamacallit, they had an attitude about it and just completely blew me off. Like, didn't want to hear nothing. And that's not okay. It's not okay.
And I have a very firm belief that if you are not going to be the lead provider, regardless of where you fall in these groupings, if you're not going to be the lead provider, show some respect to the people that are. So, like, in the context of a flight crew, if I've called for a helicopter, I'm at the point where that is what needs to happen. I need to transfer care to them, and that transfer of care happens as soon as they arrive. That flight crew comes up, I say, hey, what's up? Welcome to the party. Let's talk. I give them the rundown, like, this is what we've got. What would you like to do? And at that point, what they decide to do, obviously, if they decide to do something inappropriate, I have to intervene. But it is now their show. I don't get to bitch and gripe about the decision pathways they go down, the treatments they decide to do, and it's their patient now. And same thing with QRVs too. When, like, if you're a supervisor, let's say, or not, you're a QRV provider, you respond to a scene with a fully capable ALS crew. Unless you're gonna, and this is a pet peeve of mine, if you're not gonna write the chart, you are not running the call. Period. The end. If you have a medic, even a young medic, even an inexperienced medic, let them run the call. And be there to support them, and don't just snatch it from them, because all you're going to do is teach them to be dependent on you. You're going to teach them to not think for themselves, because they're going to get their wrist slapped whenever they do. And it's just obnoxious. Like, especially if I didn't call for you. If I didn't call for you to come, okay, your job is to help me. And I do this. If I self-dispatch to a call on a QRV, I show up. Hey guys, what you got? I don't care if it's a BLS crew. Like, hey, what you got? Anything I can do for you? You guys need a hand? It's easy.
That's another pet peeve of mine. Like, when you have it, even if it's a transport a secondary transport crew, depending on the dynamics of your service and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are secondary to the call, the first provider, let's take paramedic, for example, calling, let's say I'm on a transport truck and I call you, working a bad respiratory or something.
Like me as in I'm on a QRV, or me as in I'm a second ambulance?
Either one.
Okay.
Either one. Just you're another paramedic provider coming to help. You have more years of experience. I need help. The second person on scene, like even if they end up taking over the call, the first provider on scene is still super important and potentially still needs to be the writer of the chart, because I made initial patient contact from start to finish. I got the entire, especially if you're doing ALS intercept mid transport, not even on scene. Like I may have seen something and started something earlier in patient contact than you saw. So we may be going down two different paths.
Well, an attitude issue I've seen too very frequently, and this gets more into what Aaron was talking about. What he was talking about is that concept of the non-transport first responders, like people who are, unless they're just literally going to drive you in, or do compressions on an arrest or bag, whatnot. You're talking about your dedicated first responders that aren't going to have anything to do with transport. I've seen it happen a lot where fire department gets there on scene, and regardless of whether or not they do a fantastic job, once we get there, it's EMS's call. It's EMS's patient. Now, I always make it a point, without fail, to, when I first get on that scene, I want to talk to whoever the firefighter is going to give me the most information. Even if it's a brand new EMR who's shitting his pants over a chest pain patient, and he's got like maybe a first name and a blood pressure. Awesome. I'm here for it. Talk to me, dude. And at that point, I assume patient care, and I'm not disrespectful at all to any of them. And they may be like way out in left field and be like, "Oh my God, he's having a stroke," and and all this. And you get there, and the dude's fucking fine. And I've had that happen before.
No, agreed. I was just going to say, I love those babies. Like, I really do. Like, I appreciate the effort.
Well, and those particular firefighters, responders, rescue squads, however, if you treat those guys well, they will be your best friends for life. They will do anything you want on a call because they know that you gave a shit enough to listen to them. So you fuckers that blow off firefighters just because you don't give a shit about their report, fuck you. You're shooting yourself in the foot. You're soiling the name of EMS. You're making it harder for the rest of us. So stop fucking doing that shit. Anyway, but unfortunately, there are also times where fire they'll be, just dead solid convinced that a certain thing is going wrong. And we get there and we make the judgment call of, no, that's not what's happening. I really think it's this. And just like I need to not get butthurt if a flight crew decides to go a completely different way with something else than I thought, if you're no longer lead on that patient's care, you should keep your if you will, bruised ego in check. If you were convinced that something was going wrong, now I will go out of my way to be like, hey guys, I get what you were saying, I appreciate it. Here's what I think is really going on. Or here's why I'm not going that way because of this and this and this. And I'll try to be professional and educate. But unfortunately, that's not good enough for some people. And that's on them. I can't change them.
No.
But I think that's kind of what was getting into with this question is those kinds of dynamics too.
Well, that, and especially the respect, disrespect, attitudes, all the rest of it amongst everybody. I know we mentioned it in a previous podcast, but it also popped up on, the BLS crew getting my patient. You don't know who you're talking to.
Oh, yeah.
See, that's the thing. Like, that BLS crew, they just saw that I was in, a fire department uniform. They have no clue what I have done in my career. They're just like, oh, it's a firefighter. Like, I'm not a firefighter. Not that there's anything wrong with firefighters, but
No, no, no,
I,
no. We've
I,
chosen a different path.
yes, I chose a different path, but like that's literally the vibe that I was getting from them. They literally blew me off. And like we mentioned in a previous podcast, you could be, 911 for, county whatever, and someone has first responded or stopped to render aid, and if you talk shit to them, you don't know where that person's been.
Or who likes them and who will come and whoop your ass for what you say to them.
Well, see, and that's the thing. All of us know people all over. If I don't know somebody personally, I probably know somebody that knows somebody. Like,
Yes.
word spreads in good ways and bad ways. But keep that in mind as well. Whether it's transport being ugly to first responders having bad attitude when we change pathways, like you don't know, because there's so much education. That's why we should be helping. Everybody should be helping everybody.
Well, and just in the same way that let's say let's reverse the roles a little bit. Let's say that I am first on scene for a fire, structure fire. So I get out there and my priority is make sure, hey, is everybody out? Is everybody safe? Let's back away from the fucking house. Let's just stay away from all this. But when fire rolls up, sure, I'm going to go up and give them a report of just anything I've seen and heard. But I don't do their job. Like, I don't. I am not a certified firefighter. Yes, I've been around it my whole career, but I am not a trained firefighter. So what they decide to do is in their hands. And at that point, if they need me to move some stuff or help with people or do whatever, absolutely, I'm there for it. But I am not running that scene anymore. The same thing is true with EMS calls. And I'm not saying this from a, like, oh, we got to be the big, beat on the chest, we're the man in charge. No, it's what's appropriate. EMS people run EMS calls day in, day out, over and over. And yes, there's some of them that are jaded as fuck and stupid and miss shit. And we all miss shit sometimes.
That's not why I was giggling.
What are you giggling about?
Well, you were talking about if we were first on scene for fire, and it kind of reminded me of a funny story, and I don't know if you'll hate me if I share it.
Oh, we can talk about the time I almost burned the house down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't mind fessing up to it. I mean,
I just love it because, like, the imagery is so funny now that it's done. So, Daniel wanted to make, what was
I
it?
want to
Deep
make
fried
homemade donuts.
There we go.
Homemade donuts. Yeah. So, I don't cook with oil much. And I'm sorry, y'all. We're going to take you on a little rabbit trail here. But
I promise it's so worth it.
It is. The fire department I work at part-time, they're all still finding out about it and still think it's fucking hilarious. So I wanted homemade donuts. It's a childhood memory. My dad used to do it all the time. The best donuts in the world. Is absolutely amazing. Well, I don't cook with oil. As far as like deep frying. Like I have an air fryer, I cook shit in the oven, and I cook shit on the stove. That's it. So...
Had a grill, but anyways.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I'll grill it. I'll grill. But, like, deep frying, I don't fucking do. So, I, of course, don't have, a thermometer handy or anything for it. I just pour a bunch of oil in a skillet, big skillet.
My beautiful
I know,
skillet.
it was your nice one. and I had it covered. And I was like, I'm just going to let it heat. As soon as I see that it's getting, pretty bubbly, then I know we're good to go and we can start cooking. So, I let it sit there for a little while. Everything's going great. And I go to take the cover off of it, and this is just beautiful little, like, lightly bubbling around the edges thing of oil. I turn around, and all of a sudden, whoosh! The smoke coming off of it, the whole pan caught on fire. The smoke coming off of it covered all of the lights right there in the kitchen, so it immediately darkened that half the house. And I'm like, holy fuck. This is not good.
Well, so Daniel's like yelling at me to call 911. We have.
Well, no, I was like, first it was get the kids out of the fucking house.
Well, it was like a combination of things.
Yeah.
So like I'm literally like one-armed yeeting 3 children out the front door, yelling at them to go stand in the yard, slamming the door. And then the funny imagery that I have after I called 911 is 2 paramedics literally running around the kitchen trying to put out a fire.
So
it wasn't good.
At first I was like, okay, I don't want to touch this thing. But I was like, I'm not getting close. There's no way I'm getting close enough to put the cover back on to try and smother it. I was like, that's not fucking happening.
You can tell them what I did.
Well, and you had the right idea.
I know.
All right, so
it was my angle.
one way that you can, put out a small fire is dousing it with a bunch of flour. Well, the way that Michelle chucked it onto
Chucking is
the
a good
stove.
description.
That's an excellent description of what happened. And it sloshed the burning oil off onto the stove. So now there's a little mini campfire on the stove. Like actually on the elements in addition to what's in the pan. So I'm like, this is fantastic. So I grab the big skillet and I get it on the floor. So like, cool, we're no longer burning the roof. And finally I was like, oh shit, I have a fire extinguisher. Let me go grab that.
Mind you, we have like 4 around the house. And just
Yeah,
forgot.
yeah. Well, I've never used the damn things.
I know, right?
And so finally put it out. Everything's fine. You know, I mean, there's just a bunch of shit sprayed around our kitchen, and the ceiling is slightly like singed from smoke. We also learned that you do not clean up after a fire extinguisher with bleach.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah,
Don't do it.
apparently it has like ammonia and shit in it, so I was literally making what kind of acid shit was it? Like I was basically poisoning myself. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was delightful. So,
But
anyway,
I would say to bring it back
we
around.
should not be doing fire's job.
No. And that was the thing, to bring it back around, like when fire got on scene, we actually knew the crew because we worked in the county that we live like years ago, but we still knew some of the guys. And we're giving a report, we're like, "Oh my god, it's so bad." And they come in and they're like, "Psst, we got you guys. We're just going to fan out the house and you guys can sleep here tonight." And we're like, "What?"
Yeah, we're like, well, shit.
So, like,
We still needed to call them, don't get me wrong. Like, it was more than warranted. But
oh, 100%. But, like, point being, they took our panicked. Now, no, we weren't, like, on a truck giving report.
well, and
but
we
still
weren't
being in public.
freaking out. It was more just, hey, we are out of our element. Like,
Yeah.
whatever voodoo you guys have to do, like, here's what we got.
But point being, they were very respectful and accepting of like what we told them happened. They told us the plan, and like the way they told us, you know, that they were going to handle it and we could sleep here tonight. We were like, holy cow, cool. Like that's how it should go.
Yeah.
No matter which direction it's going.
So that's kind of the point with this is non-transport personnel do have a critical role in EMS care. And I know this is a funky discussion because here in South Carolina, fire and EMS are largely separated. So for those of you who have fire-based EMS, this is kind of a weird discussion probably.
Well, it kind of goes with law enforcement too, though, because, you know, if you're fire and EMS together, but like you still need to be able to work with law enforcement sometimes.
But law enforcement generally, except for Narcan, doesn't really like doing medical stuff a whole lot.
Well, so to tie into this discussion, we can do it later. I was actually talking to one of my students this week in Florida. They still do true public safety. She had to get fire certified. Even though she's a law enforcement officer, she was an EMT, she's now getting her paramedic. Like, they truly did public safety. So, like, that is still a thing in parts of the country.
Well, there's one department in Lawrence County that does it. That they do have cross-trained fire public safety officers.
Interesting.
It's not a stain. I think they've kind of like slowly faded away from it, but there you'd see firefighters showing up on scene with a Glock on their hip. Like that was interesting. But
Yeah.
at any rate, I think the key for this is understanding how to handle those dynamics. Yes, you can't make people want to be there. You can't make people have good attitudes. And unfortunately, mediocrity has just been standardized. Most people don't give a shit a lot of times. And I say this when I went through EMT school, I was the only one in my class who was not a firefighter. The one and only one. And I can count on one hand of that class of like almost 20 people. I can count on one hand the number of ones that actually really wanted to be there. The rest of them were there because their boss told them to, or they wanted to get a pay raise. That's it. They didn't actually care about the medicine. They would constantly talk shit about running medical calls. And unfortunately, you just can't get away from it.
Well, I was about to say, I feel really strongly about that because I hear that frequently. It was more so in Arkansas when I started, and I mean, Arkansas is a big state, but the area that I was in, I was not only the only person that wasn't a firefighter in my original cohort when I considered going to paramedic school, I was also the only female. And it really pissed me off, and even still to this day, when like fire department, not cumulatively, just some firefighters are like, oh, I'm not running medical, you know, oh, it's beneath me. It's like, no fucker, you're it as a whole, like in South Carolina, again, it's odd that fire and EMS are separate, but it's like, let's take advances in technology, for example, and, fire resistant, retardant, whatever it's called, material. The rate of true working structure fires is slowly dwindling. It's
Uh-huh.
like, if you want to keep a job, what?
Well, they've basically worked themselves out of a job. All the fire safety stuff that fire departments do, and all the public interaction, which is good, which is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's working. We've made all the vehicles are much safer. There's very few, like, this is really horrible to say, but there's very few good car wrecks anymore. Like, I mean, the cars will get all beat up, but they do such a good job of protecting the people. There's really not much to do other than just clean up the mess.
Yeah.
For most of them, there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah,
tragic wrecks. We're not minimizing that.
yeah, no, that's not like we're saying that's every single one of them. But point being, I mean, honestly, same with law enforcement, whether it's, you're in public safety or you are there to help with like a dangerous psych patient. Like, that's just the nature of the job. You're dealing with humans. Medical calls, you're going to get called to it, but mostly, fire and EMS, like, you need to work together, you're going to run fucking calls. Like, get over yourself.
Well, and to put this in a more personal tone, so talking to the same folks that have this mentality of, well, I don't run medical calls. How would you feel if someone showed up to your child sick or injured with that mentality? If you had a firefighter who showed up as the first one on scene with the attitude of, I don't like running medical calls, to your child who was in a significant emergency, you'd probably want to beat the shit out of them. To be completely honest, that and I know that logic can cut both ways, but I think that's worth pointing out that you would expect that of someone. If they committed to showing up for emergencies, you would expect them to want to be prepared for those emergencies.
But I can also say the same with EMS providers that have a history of treating I don't know how to word this, like treating patients with respect, nice, I guess, well. But if they literally say, oh, I wouldn't pop the the narc seal for your child, I don't care if they have a broken bone. Like, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah, and I think some of it I think is people. It's truly providers who are insecure in their skills and are not confident truly in their skills, that they have conditioned themselves to the absolute bare minimum to skate by. There's a lot of other things mixed in with it. That's not meant to be the sole definition. There's a lot of apathy that goes
Well,
with that.
I had another thought to it though, but like in some of those interactions, like, some of us take pride in, what our clouds are or think it's funny, and like it almost becomes a personality thing. Like, like, some people will be, I never pop the drug seal, and everybody knows it. They're like, oh yeah, such so and so, never pops the drug seal. It almost becomes an identity, like almost something they're proud of, and that's not something to be proud of.
And we have a lot of, on the one hand, there's a lot of advances in EMS right now. There's a lot of cool technology. There's a lot of cool new protocols. There's a lot of amazing stuff. But just like we have a hard time holding people to a standard of behavior, there is truly a consistent problem with maintaining a high standard of care. Unfortunately, a lot of people are really good at charting to make it look like they didn't need to do more than they did. And I think that plays a part of it. I think we're very crafty with how we do our charting. And I'm not saying that you don't be circumspect about how you chart and don't choose your words carefully, but there's a difference between choosing your words carefully to be accurate and correct and trying to hide your incompetence or laziness or apathy. So I understand there's difficulty there with that. And no, we shouldn't have to go hold every provider's hand all the time. Just because a call sounds bad doesn't mean that, oh, we suddenly need to send to everybody. Like, let that crew get there and figure out what they need within reason. Obviously, if it's a school bus wreck, you bet your ass you're going to send a couple ambulances to it. But if it's chest pain, difficulty breathing, whatever, let that crew get there and figure out what they need.
Part of me wonders, and I honestly wish I could sit down with some of these providers, like, not to armchair quarterback or be hateful, but like truly to understand their thought process.
No.
Because like doing the hospital clinicals recently, I have seen one really fucking bad decisions by doctors, but also really bad transport decisions by EMS. And I want to know, like, is it a lazy thing? Like, is it you don't want to do it, or you don't want to go to, the big main hospital because you might have to hold the wall, or or is it an education thing that you truly don't know what you're missing? Because, like, you need to know, and I tell the students this all the time, you need to know what hospitals are capable of what. So, like, I won't explain the whole call, but just as an example, a county ambulance had brought in a cardiac patient to a level 3, they might be a level 4. Some
Definitely not the appropriate facility.
well, yes, a non-appropriate facility. This facility has literally zero cardiac capabilities, like zero, nothing, no cath lab, nada. Like, you go there, you're gonna die if you're having an active STEMI. Like, not an appropriate facility. Well, so I look, my students were in a room, and I look and notice on the monitor the heart rate was like it was either 20 or 30. I was like, oh, not good. So I pulled them to come in there, and heart rate was 30, blood pressure was like 60 over like 40 or 30 or something. It was shit over fuck. Well, the medic, who I don't know his name, I've seen him in passing, he's a seasoned provider. Couldn't tell you how many years, just I know he's been around, is giving report, and he's like, oh yeah, bolused in a whole liter of fluids, gave, a total of 3 milligrams of atropine, and nothing's working, so we brought him here. I'm like, I mean, obviously I didn't say this to his face, but like, what the fuck? This is not an appropriate facility. My biggest thing is, one, why are you not pacing this patient? Two, once we got him, I looked at the life pack, I looked at the hospital monitor, and then I even looked at their little life pack shocky monitor thing that looks weird in the ER. This patient was in a junctional rhythm. Atropine's not going to do anything. So, like, literally start to finish, like, not to armchair quarterback, but literally looking at what they brought in, none of those decisions were appropriate.
I think another thing I've observed too over the years that affects these kinds of habits with people, because really what we're talking about is the quality of habits that you create as a provider.
And education. You have to care.
Well, but I'm saying that goes hand in hand with it.
I mean, yes.
You have to have good educational habits. Not that you need to spend all your spare time reading medical journals, but you need to tackle the things that you know you're deficient in. We've talked about this a good bit as well, but know your own weaknesses and go fix them. But one thing I've seen over the years is there are certain times where agencies will put processes in place that are so cumbersome and inconvenient. Not that that really matters, but these processes in place that discourage people from doing the right thing because they know that they're going to have so much extra work to do after the fact that they shouldn't have to do. So, an example, a place that you and I have worked for in the past made their narc resupplying procedures so cumbersome.
Not just narcs, all drugs. You couldn't get there was no way to get drugs without a supervisor key.
Well, I'm not just talking about that, but
You're
just
talking
like
about
the
the
fact that
paperwork?
to replace narcs was literally a 30-minute procedure that you had to go out of service for.
Yeah.
And you could not go do it. Like, you couldn't be like, man, this is a late call, let me just pass this partial box off to the next crew and they can go get it refilled. Nope. Your ass had to go and get it refilled. Cannot tell you how many times, and I know you've seen it too, how many times crews did not give narcs because they did not want to go restock.
I was told, when I was an EMT, I was told by a paramedic, oh, I don't give narcs to fucking anybody because I'm not going to headquarters.
Which is shitty patient care, and shame on you providers that is the way you think.
Well, that provider BLS'd an S fracture of like a 90-year-old woman. She wasn't that old.
Yeah.
She looked old, but like, it's just that's not appropriate patient care.
It's not. That's not what you were taught. That's not what you signed up to do. If that's really how pathetic your standards are, then you're a detriment to the field. Period. You are. I don't care. Get out. But you have to give a shit. But I think agencies need to look at that too and say, hey, what are ways that we can still, and this is where this requires some cooperation between field and admin staff. What are ways that we can make doing the right thing as easy and rewarding and practical as possible.
I think it also, when you have, whether it's med control we were literally actually just talking about this tonight, when you have either supervisors, admin, med control, that if one person fucks up,
Oh,
they need to not do a shotgun response.
fuck, I hate that shit.
And at that service, that's what happened.
Oh,
Somebody
yeah.
was stealing narcs, so they freaked the fuck out and changed how you do the narc procedure, and it's literally made it so, as you say, cumbersome,
Yep.
torturous. Like, just getting non-narcotic drugs and supplies was horrendous. Like, it was an entire chore that you had to do.
Yeah.
So not responding with a shot, and same with, we're talking about first responders as well. Like, just because you have a bad interaction with one fire crew or even one firefighter, you shouldn't have like a gut knee wrenching like shotgun response of, oh, fuck all of them. So when you have to run a call, you immediately have a bad attitude about it.
If your response to any difficulty in your life is to villainize a large group of people, you are so profoundly immature that none of us can help you. And I should not we should not have to say it, but it is so common in this field to have this attitude of, well, I had a discussion with a group of people at work the other night where we were talking about this, about people, not checking trucks off properly, and people getting bent out of shape. I don't trust anybody, and da 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 da. And I just do. Okay, do it yourself. Go check off your fucking truck. Like, you should be able to account for what's in there. Don't just sit here and bitch and villainize just pretty much the majority of people you work with ad hoc just because. If it really bothers you that much, get off your ass and check off your truck and shut your fucking mouth.
But do you want to know something sad? I feel like that is some attitude that's being developed in the world in general.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, well, but we're seeing it not just with active providers, but I mean, Daniel and I, and even one of my bosses, had to have some kind of discussion about this with some students. I say that very vaguely. It's, one in particular, but just, if you have one, if you're not studying, and this goes for active field providers, but like if you're not studying, you're not doing a good job, something is up, and you're talked to about it, and you immediately villainize and attack literally everybody, like that's lack of respect as well for yourself, for patients, for family members, for really anybody in the field.
And I'm so tired of hearing the griping and the bitching and the moaning and everything. If something really bothers you, you be the person that does something about it. Period. Don't draw attention to it. Don't parade yourself. Just fucking do it. If it's the right thing, cool. You should be fucking doing it anyway.
Which we're not saying that nobody can ever complain, because we
No.
have complained and talked about things plenty of times, but guess what? We're taking a step and want all of you to join.
No, yes. It's when that's literally all you do is
Yes,
complain.
that's your personality at
That's
work.
just what you're known for. You just sit there and you can literally sit for 2 hours and bitch about the people around you and tell stories about, well, this person didn't do this and they didn't check off this thing and this. I understand that experiences happen, but when they make it a character thing
There you go.
and say, oh, that person, they're just horrible and they're so obnoxious and this and this and that because they did this and that, like, you know what? Maybe they had a bad fucking day. Or maybe they weren't trained properly. Maybe they haven't had people who are holding them accountable and making sure they knew what the list goes on. You making character assumptions based on a pet peeve is fucking stupid. Now, can we still call out bad behavior for what it is? Absolutely. If you're being
Please
lazy,
do.
if you're being lazy, guess what? And we do it here on the show all the time, and we're going to keep fucking doing it. If you are practicing bad medicine, if you are being a poorly behaving human being, we're going to call out that behavior. Now, it falls on you to take the initiative to fix those things. And my God, if we could see just a handful of people start implementing this kind of mindset in their lives and taking responsibility for those things and fixing those things, fuck yes. Fuck yes, that's what we're here to do. But ultimately, these things need to be addressed, and addressed in a way that there is a solution offered and that there is support available and you still maintain respect. Now, the respect word is kind of a loaded topic, because you have the people who are like, oh, well, you have to earn my respect. I don't just give out respect to anybody. And then you have the people who say, well, hey, I give everybody a little bit of respect, and what they do with it is up to them. And then there's the, well, I believe I was taught to respect everybody. I think we're mixing words. I thought a lot about this, especially the past week, because I know this is a lot of, well, not just because of my own experiences with people, but because of all the different conversations I've had with people over the years, and friends I know who have been promoted and had to deal with these things, and so many different topics and conversations. But really, what we talk about as, quote, respect is actually can actually be broken into three different categories. There's a baseline sense of decency. So, as a human being, there's certain givens about how I should treat you. There's certain assumptions, good, healthy assumptions, that should be made about how I should be treating you as a human being. Period. The end. And that extends to how you talk to people, regardless of their title, their age, their beliefs, their race, all of it. There's a certain expectation of decency in how I speak with you. And there are times where I have to be direct and I have to be callous and sometimes maybe perceived as rude. But because that's what's necessary in that situation in order to preserve the dignity of everybody else that's involved in this situation. So I think we need to very carefully define this. So decency is something that at a baseline you should have. If you're saying that people have to earn a baseline decency from you in
You're a
how you
shitty
talk to them,
person.
I mean, that's pretty awful, y'all. Like that's pretty bad. Like, a new hire shouldn't have to earn the right for you to not yell at them over
Something stupid.
over getting the wrong glove sizes. No, that should be a decency thing. So, decency is at a baseline. The next step up from that, I would say, is professionalism. Professionalism is something that is learned. There's nuance to it. There's dichotomies involved. There's a lot of situational awareness and preparation that you need to have when it comes to professionalism. And an example of this ties into what we were talking about earlier in interacting with the non-transport first responders, especially the ones that don't need to be there, being able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to speak decently to these individuals, no matter what, and I'm going to go the next step and be a professional to these people. Now, that doesn't mean I have to like them. That doesn't mean I have to agree with them. That doesn't mean that I embrace their identity or mentalities as a department. But I can still be a professional. And really, what all of these come down to is emotional regulation, being able to put your own ego aside, not take shit personally, be a good human being. So, decency. Sorry, you have a.
Well,
I can go on about this, so please interrupt.
no, you're good. I was just going to say, along with this and kind of everything that we've talked about, you chose to be in this field. Like, if it's gotten to
Yeah,
a
you
point,
did.
if it's gotten to a point, it doesn't matter if you're fire, EMS, law enforcement, first responder, transport, CC, literally anything that we've talked about tonight. If you can't be, and I'm not saying you have to be no chipper, like, oh my God, I'm so happy I'm here.
Please fucking
Like,
don't. At 2 a.m., I will bite your head off, probably.
I mean, yes, and that's,
Or at the
well,
very least, I will just leave.
I mean, fair. But, like, we're not saying you have to be, like, the super nice chipper, like,
No.
gaudy, like, happy person all the time. But, like, if you can't at baseline be nice and, the baseline, I want to say respectful, but the baseline decency and, like, on the job professionalism, like, get the fuck out. Like, you're literally making this field worse and causing unnecessary conflict. Like, fine, maybe you don't necessarily like fire, but, like, you need to give them decency because, one, they're humans. Two, respect them professionally because, hey, having more people for that lift assist to the 800-pound patient is going to save everyone's backs.
And building off of that, it's even hard for us to define these variations of respect without using the word respect. But like we said, decency is a baseline thing. Period. The end. Professionalism is learned, and you're going to make mistakes, and that's fine. That's something where we should mentor people and help them get better, show them ways to do better. Then you get to an actual specific definition of respect, which in this context, I would say respect is earned.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I respect you, like I truly respect you, you have done things that I have A, borne witness to, B, been recipient of, C, have heard, in a positive way, which God, if you are spoken of positively in the grapevine, you're doing something right, because that's pretty fucking rare.
Mm-hmm.
I can count on one hand the number of people in my entire career that I've met that work in this field that I've never heard a bad word about them.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, just and that's not saying that everybody's bad. Just people like to make shit up. People like to spread shit, whatever, just because they're bored.
Or if you like snap at them one day for one tiny thing, then they're like, oh, they're a horrible person.
Yeah, but respect, when you narrowly define it down beyond the decency and professionalism, that is something that is earned, and that is something you can lose. Now, just because you lose respect for somebody doesn't mean you have to stop being professional. Doesn't mean you should stop being professional.
Doesn't mean you start treating them without decency.
Exactly. Now, the professionalism to me is a quote like additional thing. So, if it's a situation where it's somebody who has specifically gone after my well-being, my job security, my family, what have you. All right,
All
I
bets
may
are
be
off.
as far as if I have to work with you still. You will still get the decency. You will get the bare fucking minimum of professionalism. But that's because I'm treating you for what you have done to me and how you have been with me. And that's where, again, the professionalism is nuanced. It's not a hard and fast thing. There's ways to play the game and ways not to. So learn that, play that game, and that's okay. But I don't know. I feel like this topic of respect comes up so much, and especially down here, whether it's the damn Yankees that like to run their mouths, be like, "Oh, I'm just blunt." No, you're just tactless. Period.
Yes, there's a way to say there's a way. Well, I mean, we run into this sometimes with school as well. Like you'll have one person that says something like absolutely ass hat like, and then you have this other person that will say basically the same thing but with more tact. It's all in how you deliver it. It's how you communicate it.
And you should be committing to a standard of decency and professionalism to be in this job. Period. Now, the respect, that's just kind of depend on your currency with people.
Well, raising the standard of decency and professionalism really needs to, I almost feel like this is a whole thing that should be taught in school. Just like documentation should be harped on more in school. Like, we were talking about the level of commitment to quality care, CEUs, and like all that. Your responsibility is to treat people with decency and professionalism. You're not going to treat the, person at the grocery store that bags your groceries like shit. You're not going to treat the janitor like shit. Like everybody deserves decency. Clean up after yourself. Don't trash the table and make a waitress pick up after you. You should have a commitment to quality in your life.
And I should, well, not just I should, but it should not be a question that decency and professionalism are expectations. This is not optional. These are expectations. Respect is optional. That's fine. If you don't like me, cool. If I said something, did something, you took a certain way, or you just have a bad vibe about me, what the fuck ever, I don't care. That's fine. That does not excuse you from being professional and being a decent human being.
It's funny, actually, one of my students this past week said something almost just like that. She was saying, whether you're blunt or this or that, like, personalities clash. Where no one is getting along with fucking everybody. Like, someone is going to dislike something. You can say whatever you want about me personally, like, and I believe this too. You can say whatever you want about me personally. I'm too blunt, whatever. But I want to be the person that you can't say shit about my patient care.
Well, another flip side to this is seeing people in authority, and I don't want to call them leaders because I think that's an insult to the term. But when they use the assumed respect as a stick to beat you with, that
Yes.
trumps professionalism and decency. If that is how you view your power as a, quote, leader or manager, supervisor, whatever title you want to put on it, and you think that because you've been in this for 30 plus years, that people should just automatically respect you and that gives you a carte blanche to behave however you want, absolutely not. Fuck you.
You know, wording it that way actually refers back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. A paramedic deserves professionalism from and to the EMT, but there is not an inherent, oh, I respect you, just like, paramedic to CC back and forth, to flight back and forth, even to first responders, not even EMRs. I've run into some firefighters in the rural counties that are like, I ask, what is your cert? They're like, I'm a firefighter. Okay,
Cool.
do you have your EMR? No, I'm a firefighter. Like, cool, I need to know that. But,
Yeah.
cool, that's fine. Everybody, there's still a level of professionalism within the field, but I agree. So, like, one of our friends had brought up a while ago when we first started this podcast, and we had briefly touched on respect, but hadn't dove further into it, that let's say someone who has a history of being, like, a bad provider. Like, they're a hateful person, they're a bad provider, they get promoted to a supervisor. Well, does that automatically mean I have to respect them? Absolutely not.
Fuck no.
Absolutely not. But there's still a level of professionalism because in general, there's
Yeah.
an inherent chain of command.
It's kind of the old adage of respect the office, not the person.
Yeah.
And I hate the topic of politics, but I think it's very relevant to our current state of affairs. I have zero respect for our current commander-in-chief, but I don't endorse the name calling, because there's so much just open mocking of him. And yes, he is a senile individual who I think is just a puppet of a much larger organization. But that aside, point being, you can still not respect someone while still being a decent human being, still being professional. Like, those two are not in conflict. So be a mature adult. I think a lot of people just use this as a scapegoat. Say, well, I don't respect them, so I can say whatever I want. No, that's not how it works.
Which, don't get me wrong, I like dirty jokes, inappropriate jokes, dark jokes.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
Daniel and I will even call each other names sometimes. Sometimes, not even in a fighting sense, but like just a joking sense. But really, it's not even what you joke about or what you gripe and bitch about on a bad day. It's what you make a habit, what you make your personality, and what people consistently see.
And some people would say, well, once I get promoted or whatever, I can't fraternize the same way, or we can't joke like we used to. I think you're being too literal at that point, because
Yes.
I have had plenty of supervisors who I could walk in at the start of the shift and be like, motherfucker, what the hell's going on today? Like, what the hell are you doing? Why'd you show up late? But there's an understanding that, hey, I'm busting your balls. You're still my boss. You tell me to do something, I'm going to fucking do it. I'm still going to call you for advice about stuff. I'm still going to touch base with you when something goes wrong. I'm still going to show you that, professional respect, that baseline decency. And I think the personal respect you build with somebody enhances and further nuances the professionalism.
Well, because then you have the supervisors that if you say, good morning, ma'am, and breathe incorrectly, then they lose their shit for the rest of the day. Like,
Yeah, the ones who are mostly robotic.
yeah.
And again, this also doesn't mean that you shouldn't buck up and push back and say no when it's appropriate.
It's learning that balance.
And this is where, and I know we talk about him a lot, and I swear we read plenty of other people and listen to plenty of other people.
That's okay. We also just talk about cardiac arrest. It's fine. We have our habits.
What's this we stuff, Paleface? You talk. I'm just kidding.
Listen, Lenny.
But everybody's heard about extreme ownership. We've talked about it plenty. We've quoted it, whatever. Well, even dear old Jocko decided that he had to write the follow-up book to that dichotomy of leadership because people were going so hard and literal with the first book and the presentation of extreme ownership that they were missing that, hey, there's give and take situations, there's nuances to principles of leadership and that vary depending on your situation, and you sometimes need to strike a balance with different people in your organization, different team members. They need to be treated accordingly. It's not just, oh, I'm just this type of leader, I just behave like this, or I just do this. There's nuance to it. It requires maturity and emotional regulation to understand that and apply that and live that and embrace that.
Well, it's just like, don't be a cookbook medic. You don't want to be, a cookbook leader. We need to, we say profiling, but I don't think that's quite right. You need to be able to read patients, read the room, read your coworkers. Some coworkers, you can make dirty, racist jokes, even if you don't mean to be racist. I think white jokes are funny, but
I have the Family Guy approach to humor. Everybody deserves an equal opportunity to be made fun of.
exactly.
Everybody.
But point being, like, read the room. There are some people that you can do that with, or other people that get offended by, let's say, cussing, for example. So, like, you can have decency and professionalism to maybe, I'm not saying be fake, but, like, would I say fuck every other word in front of a person that genuinely gets offended? Like, no, I'm going to try.
I'm thinking of all of the calls I've run in churches. Like the sick calls, like, Meemaw's having a stroke or somebody's having a heart attack or whatnot. I'm just imagining one call in particular that I remember running. I think it was a stroke. I can just imagine being in the middle of those pews in that sanctuary with all this wood paneling. I can just imagine myself saying, "Holy fuck!" and just how many people that would piss off. I didn't do it.
Piss off, or you're going to cause a bunch more heart attacks.
I know, right? They'd all just start falling over with the Holy Spirit. But anyway. But learn the tact.
Well, learn the tact, and it's just like, you need to not be a cookbook medic. You need to not be a cookbook person. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
You need to be able to change algorithms like you change with patients. You need to be able to change who you're working with and personality. And I know we've harped on a good bit of stuff, but, like, this is something that we've been seeing a lot of, as we refer back to cognitive dissonance, and a lot of issues that we've been seeing just in the last few weeks. And I know everybody, across the country, even globally, probably sees that. And especially the attitudes and the conflict amongst varying levels of personnel, transport, first responder, just literally anybody that we have discussed. You need to have a better quality of patient care, better quality of attitudes, interpersonal relationships. Having all three public service things in our area separate is not exactly the norm. There are plenty of states, even countries that stuff is mixed. And I'm sorry, everybody's going to run medical calls, even cops. I ran an overdose, actually. It was probably last year. And one of the cops that showed up is a paramedic that works part-time with county. I never would have known that, but I treated him with respect. So, like, we all cross-train, have jobs. I show up on a QRV at the fire department, even though I'm not a firefighter. Don't be that person that's going to treat other people like shit.
Well, and I know that, I don't remember how many states this is true in, but I know that in Maryland, and I think possibly in Virginia, too, all the medevac helicopters are run by state police. Like, they're not even run by EMS.
Interesting.
Yeah, like one of our coworkers, she had actually applied to go work for the Maryland State Police as a paramedic for the helicopter. Their selection process is ridiculous. Like, I mean, if you're going to go work anywhere around DC, those are coveted positions no matter where you are, especially in law enforcement.
I would say I believe it.
Which is, you wouldn't think it'd be as competitive because there's literally 6 law enforcement agencies that operate within the District of Columbia by itself. Do you know the FBI has their own police, like their own street uniform police?
No, I didn't. That's
Yes.
kind of cool.
It's really weird. Like, I did a Police Week 5K back when I was in high school and part of the Police Explorer post. And it It was a 5K in DC, and I literally saw 6 different agencies that were based in DC.
That's cool.
But anyway, a lot of what we're talking about, the context in which we're speaking is very specific to the upstate of South Carolina where we're located, but the principles will translate out to wherever you are. And the key takeaways from here is it's all rooted in your professionalism and being decent, being professional, giving respect to those who earn it. But we may or may not also have that episode before that we did, To Fight or Not to Fight, where we deal with conflict resolution. You're going to have conflict. You're going to have situations that come up on calls that are not going to be comfortable. And you're going to have some hard conversations with people. Do that the right way. Don't just gloss stuff over or, he's probably not going to listen to it. Well, no, go have that conversation with that guy. Go engage that person and say, hey, that was not appropriate what happened. I had to do that on a call, this was a while ago, where I didn't approve of how my backup treated my partner. And when we got to the hospital, I was like, hey, that really wasn't cool how you treated her. You should go apologize to her. Like, that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, it wasn't an argument. It wasn't a name calling, whatever. It's just, hey, that really wasn't fair. Like, that was not well received. You should probably go talk to her about that. And you need to just have the balls to have those conversations.
Well, that and just everybody has a job to do. Everybody is going to rely on everybody in some form or fashion at some point. So, like, have the professionalism, but, with the people that don't want to run medical calls, get the fuck over yourself.
Yeah,
Like,
pretty much.
I'm like, there's no other way around it. There's nothing else to say about it. Get over yourself or get the fuck out of the field because you're making the field worse, and I don't want you treating me or my children. Like, you treat me like shit, like, especially as a knowledgeable provider, we're gonna fucking fight, and it's gonna turn into a fight. Like, I promise you. Bet. Our daughter fell, and we're pretty sure, like, had broken her hand and stuff, and the crew that showed up were, yes, our friends, but I couldn't, like, part of me was having a cow like a normal parent, and then the other part of me was, like, trying to explain things to our daughter like a paramedic, and the crew was so patient with me. But I also respected them. They respected me. I admitted I overstepped and apologized, and they were like, we get it. We're parents too. All the rest of it. Like, if you can't have that professionalism, get the fuck out. Everyone's going to run medical calls, and with the whole committing to quality care, again, commit to quality care like that patient is your family member, or get the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
I promise I'm done.
You're good. We didn't really. We're trying to be a little more spontaneous with how we do this, because at least I've felt that we have a much better energy and the podcast flows better when we write less stuff out. I swear there was at least one episode we probably had like 3 pages worth of notes written in there.
That was like the first one, and even the audio wasn't very good.
I know. Oh, but we hope that you're able to take something away from this. And I know maybe to some people this may sound like hold hands, sing kumbaya kind of thing. Anybody who knows me knows that that's not how I take life at all.
No, I really don't want to sing kumbaya y'all with any of you fuckers.
Well.
But I just want us to be able to joke, have our dirty jokes, gripe when we need to, but don't make that your personality.
Yeah, it's... I'm verbal stroking now, too.
That's
words
okay.
Words are escaping me.
It's also super late.
Well,
so
yeah, it's 11 o'clock and I'm old, so...
We could always
shit
wrap
happens.
it up. Our bedtime was like 2.5 hours ago.
It's more like an hour and a half ago for me. But, point being, we hope that you were able to take something meaningful away from this. Hope that some of you were offended, because you need to be. And I hope that you are able to take the criticism and actually... Because honestly, if you hear this and you're offended, I don't know you. I mean, there's certainly some people I know that this applies to, but... chances are, if you're one of the now thousands of people that listen to this, I don't know you. So if you're sitting there getting offended by this, that's on you. So
because it wasn't a direct attack.
Yeah.
It's just a general statement of something that we've noticed.
We've had downloads pop up in Russia.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know you fuckers. So take it for what it is. We're speaking both from practical experience and informed study. We're not out here trying to poke you in the eye. We both made mistakes plenty of times in our careers.
Oh, 100%. And I'm sure we'll continue.
And I know I can look back at the phases of my career and see how I've grown in these things and had to have my wings clipped at different times and have had to do some wing clipping on other people. But we need to actually be talking about these things. We need to be offending people. We need to risk being offensive, because if we don't, then we're never going to get any actual change. And that is what we are trying to do, what EMS 2.0 is all about, what the show is all about, is bringing about some real change on the real things that really means something to people, the stuff that really matters.
Well, and keep the questions and comments rolling, because we have so many thoughts and processes and things going on. Like, what are your ideas? What are things that you notice? Surely there are some things that are universal, and there are some things that are going to be area specific.
And we love the comments. We love the sarcasm. I love the GIF wars. That was fantastic.
Oh, with the top badge.
Yeah, Stewie. Like, I was like, man, I love it. Like, this is great. You know, we loved that interaction. And I swear we're ADD as hell. So if we don't get back to you for a couple of days, it's not, we didn't mean to. Just life is life. But keep it coming. We'd love to hear from you. Keep having those conversations. Keep putting the word out. Share what you find value in. And we will see you guys next time. Have a good night.
The Paramedic AF show is property of the EMS 2.0 project. The beliefs, opinions, and practices discussed in the show are our own and do not represent our respective employers. Please follow your local protocols, policies, and procedures at all times. All listeners are encouraged to research and self-educate regarding all content represented in this show. For more information regarding EMS 2.0, please visit our Facebook page for our website and social media links. Thank you for your continued support, and we look forward to you joining us next time.